This morning I'm going to introduce you to one of the great characters of the New South Wales Lancer Regiment and a great Parramatta man, Ash Whitney. Ash Whitney was born at Prospect on the 29th September 1881, and in those days Prospect was a semi-rural community, and Ash grew up as a fine horseman, and he specialised in an event called tent pegging, which you can still see carried on at the Royal Easter Show, Homebush, to this day. That's when COVID-19 doesn't get in the way. Ash joined the Lancer Cadet Unit in
1897.
He joined and graduated to K Troop, also known as Parramatta Troop of the New South Wales Lancers, on the 23rd of February 1899. Just in time to become a part of Captain Fighting Charlie Cox's half squadron of 100 Lancers who travelled to the United Kingdom to train full-time with the British Army at Aldershot. That contingent was the very first British colonial volunteer unit to do such a thing. Several days before they were due to return to Australia, the Boer War between the British Empire and the original Dutch settlers of Cape Colony, the Boers, broke out. And in a fit of great patriotic fervour, Fighting Charlie volunteered his entire half squadron of Lancers to fight for the British in South Africa. So when they left for home on the SS Nineveh, they weren't certain whether they were going to just call in at Cape Town and then proceed home to Australia, or if they were going to stop at Cape Town, disembark and fight. And you need to bear in mind that all of the Lancers were just part-time, partially paid militia, and they'd actually paid for their own way to get themselves to the United Kingdom because the New South Wales government did not provide one penny to assist with the project. And Ash Whitney, as a young 17-year-old, had to raise the princely sum of £20 sterling, which is the equivalent of 20,000 Australian dollars in today's currency, to be able to get over there. When they arrived at Cape Town, they caught up with a telegram from the New South Wales government giving them permission to stop and fight. But there was a condition, and that was that there couldn't be anybody younger than the age of 21. Ash Whitney was but 17. So he, along with several other Lancers in a similar situation, just made themselves scarce until the SS Nineveh had left Cape Town and they couldn't be sent back home to Australia. They then reappeared, and Ash became, if not the youngest, certainly one of the youngest Australian soldiers ever to fight in the Boer War. He was a part of the Lancers who in turn were a part of General French's cavalry division who fought in the north of Cape Colony, in the Orange Free State and in Western Transvaal. However, Ash caught pneumonia, and as well as pneumonia, typhus and dysentery. Pretty fearsome combination of illnesses. He was sent to hospital in Bloemfontein and eventually recovered, but was invalided back to Australia on the 13th of November 1900. For his service, he was awarded the Queen's South Africa Medal with clasps for being present at the actions at Paardeberg, Cape Colony, the relief of Kimberley and Dryfontein. When he returned to Australia and he returned to the Parramatta community, he was feted and treated as a hero. He was awarded by the equivalent of the City of Parramatta Council an illuminated tribute to his courage and his service to his country. Ash Whitney later was married once again in Parramatta at St John's, what is now the cathedral. In those days it was St John's Church, and he was married on the 10th of November 1909. Another highlight of Ash Whitney's career with the regiment was when he carried the guidon at the opening of Australia's new, as it was then, Parliament House in Canberra in 1927. When he eventually retired from the Australian Army, having spent his entire career with the New South Wales Lancers, he had spent 36 years of service as retirement date for the 1st of September 1935, and he retired as the Senior Warrant Officer in the Australian Armed Forces. He was awarded a very unusual honorific, that of freedom of entry to the City of Parramatta, for his services to the community and his services to the Australian Army in 1974. Such an honorific is usually only awarded to military units and allows them the right to be able to parade and march through the centre of, in this case, Parramatta, carrying arms and flying their colours. The only other person that the Parramatta archivists can find who has been given such a personal honorific was the great Betty Cuthbert, the Australian Olympic sprint champion. Ash Whitney also had his name associated with the annual trophy awarded by the Lancer Regiment to the finest shot in the Lancers, finest rifle shot in the Lancers. And Ash personally presented that trophy for many years. A couple of years before he died, aged 96 in 1977, he gave an interview to the Australian War Memorial to talk about his career in the Army, particularly focusing on his experience in the Boer War. We will finish this story sort of with an extracts from that interview, which start off with a most unusual, very rarely seen newsreel about the departure of Australian troops from Circular Quay to fight in the Boer War.
Mr. Whitney,
yes.
Remembering back to the time that you joined up, can you remember those days?
My word, I can, especially today. Today is the 3rd of March, and I was privileged to belong to a squadron of Lancers that left Sydney to go to England for 6 months training at Aldershot, and we're attached as the 4th Squadron of a mighty regiment, an Imperial regiment, the 6th Dragoon Guards. And we were trained just as an Imperial cavalryman was, and we did everything. I think I told you a little while ago, we did everything bar the main guard.
What made you want to join up?
Well, when I was going to school, I was born at Prospect, not far away from here, and I used to watch 3 Lancers going down the Western Road on parade of a Saturday, not far from our home. I thought to myself, when I grow up big enough, I could always ride. I said, when I grow up big enough, I'll save up and buy a good horse and I'll join the Lancer Regiment. But I joined the Lancer Cadets, which were, in those days, the only Lancer Cadets in the world. in the British Empire anyhow. And I joined those, and from there, as I grew, and I had a good horseman, and the time came on this, near the 3rd of March, we were camped, there was a camp at Parramatta Barracks, under canvas, and they asked me would I like to go to England with the Lancer Regiment, as I was a big boy, big lump, 17. So I said yes, but I'd have to ask Mum. My mum was a widow. And when I got home, I said to Mum, I've got a chance to go to England, Mum, but I had to find 25 quid. Oh, she said, well, we'll find it somehow. But anyhow, it was found, and I was selected to go to England with the other.
Do you remember much about the campaign? What were your feelings when you first saw action?
Well, I thought that this was the end of me, and I thought that I was not going to see any Metropolis again. Because when I was a kid going to school, mind you, I'm only 17, I'm going to school with history where they formed squares, the British formed squares and fought so they're finished. And I thought to myself, that's the dead end of that. Well, we went into action. Before the end of November, we were in action. And our squadron was broken up into two. The Scottish Brigade under General Methuen, I think it was, the Guards it was, up at Belmont, Graspan, Magasfontein and those places, to do reconnaissance for the infantry brigade because they had no mounted men. The other half went down to Norport, and we were sent out towards Rendsburg on the same kind of job, and we copped it about the same time as the chaps up Belmont did.
What were the Boers like as fighters?
Oh, good hit and run. They'd be on a copper in good positions when we come along. That's how they copped us the first time. They gave us a bit of pepper and then cleared out. When we had come to the coppers where they were,
when you came back from the Boer War, what sort of reaction did you get from the people back here in Australia and New South Wales?
Wonderful. That's part of it. That was. We got a wonderful reception. I was invalided at home. I got enteric fever at Kimberley, after the relief at Kimberley. And I got home and everybody's, well, they looked after me wonderful well in Bloemfontein. I was sent back from Kimberley on a very slow transport. There were no cars in those days. In a very slow transport in the summer sunshine nearly killed me on this back of this wagon. But I was put into a hospital there and they cured me. I had enteric pneumonia and dysentery.
Did the people back here in Australia really know much about the Boer War? Did they really care?
I don't think they knew much about it, but they did a wonderful job.